All right, the time is now 3 p.m. Today is August 19th, 2026. We're meeting in the Tom Baker Room for the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. Darcy, please call the roll.
Commissioner Sackerson?
Here.
Commissioner Nodlin?
Here.
Commissioner Hall?
Here.
Commissioner Perrin?
Here.
Commissioner Swanson?
Here.
And Chair Engel.
Here. All right, moving on to the Historic Preservation Report. There are several that have been reviewed, but I don't think anything since the last meeting. There's one in June, but I think that was before that meeting. Can we review the meeting minutes and get approval on that, unless there are any corrections?
I move to approve. A second.
All right, any discussion or corrections? If not, Darcy, please call the roll.
Commissioner Nodlin?
Yes.
Commissioner Perrin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Swanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Sackerson?
Yes.
And Chair Engel.
Yes. All right, minutes have been approved and signed. Moving on to the public comment period. I don't see anybody in the audience that's signed anything. Is there anybody online? Shockingly not. Okay. We will move on then to the Section 106 FEMA South Bismarck Flood Control Project update.
Chair Engel and Commissioners, FEMA notified the Bismarck Historic Preservation Commission of a FEMA-funded flood mitigation project proposed in South Bismarck. The city of Bismarck is seeking to address flood risk from the Missouri River by implementing measures that will provide FEMA-accredited flood protection to public and private property. A Class 3 intensive survey was conducted based on some initial considerations of project alternatives while defining the project scope at the beginning of the project. Those two alternatives were dismissed and the project design was reduced in scale based on that initial review. FEMA did discuss the design changes with North Dakota SHPO in November of 2025. And after reviewing site forms and aerial imagery, both of those parties agreed no further field investigations were necessary. However, a Class 1 file search was completed in December of 2025. The project area was also slightly adjusted in 2026 to incorporate an additional area, which was not part of those original Class 3 or Class 1 investigations. As such, a second Class 3 of that additional area was conducted. At this time, staff did reach out to SHPO to determine what their determination or if they had any concerns regarding this project. We have not received any information from SHPO at this point for this. Link to a story map for more information on the project was also included in the agenda for this item, just to give a broader idea of that scope of the project. Based on the results of those investigations, FEMA determined that no historic properties were present within the final area of potential effects and that the proposed project would result in no historic properties affected. I believe there's a map attached within the agenda item as well, just showing where that project area is. Staff recommends reviewing the Section 106 review request for the FEMA-funded South Bismarck Flood Control Project and providing a determination.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Is there any discussion about this?
Move to approve, but no historic properties affected.
Second.
All right. Any discussion, questions? No? All right. Darcy, will call the roll.
Commissioner Perrin?
Yes.
Commissioner Swanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Sackerson?
Yes.
Commissioner Nodlin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
And Chair Engel.
Yes. All right. Moving on to the baseball history brochure update.
Just kind of providing an overview of all our grants right now. It looks a little different than how I've structured your agendas in the past for these items. I just wanted to call them out individually just for more clarity on some of these. So the first item that we'll be looking at on the agenda today is the baseball history brochures. The text is currently being finalized, as well as the photos for those brochures. The goal will be to have the draft brochure presented for the Historic Preservation Commission and the State Historical Society's review next month in order to meet requirements for the 2024 Historic Preservation grant that would be funding those brochures. Do want to note that we are coming up towards the end of the life cycle for that grant. In order to utilize the funds under that grant, anything that would be utilizing those funds needs to occur by September 30th of this year. If that doesn't occur, the brochures, if the Historic Preservation Commission or the State Historical Society is not comfortable with how those brochures look, and we're not able to print those brochures by that time, we wouldn't be able to use this grant to fund the printing of those brochures.
Okay. And we would lose the funding? Is that?
Yes, Chair Engel, Commissioners, that is correct.
Okay. How close are we to those brochures? Not close? Okay.
We will be.
Let's target like September 10th, shall we? To get a draft that we can all look at and maybe like finalize. I can help too, if that works. And give it our old college try to get across the finish line so we don't lose the funding. Thank you for the update. All right. On to the, oh, sorry, are there any other discussion or questions about that? Any other volunteers to help out? No? Okay. Moving on to the local history education kits.
Thank you, Chair Engel and Commissioners. So contents are still being finalized for the education kits. The goal, again, will be to have these physically present. We do have nice big boxes for them. Those will be presented at the next meeting for this commission's review in order to meet those requirements of that 2024 Historic Preservation Fund grant. All the items except for the printed versions of the historic newspapers from that area have been acquired. Staff's working to get those newspapers for those kits prior to that September 30th deadline. The worksheets are finalized, just need to be grouped together in the full digital format and placed online for review as well. All digital components will be available for the State Historical Society to review as well for the grant. Might be more difficult if they'd like to review any of the physical contents, but all those physical items that are included correspond either to the worksheets or the overall kit content for an overview of the era that's being shown there. I believe that's it. Thank you.
I have a question, Lauren.
Yep.
If we provide photographs of the contents so they can see them, that might be useful. And I can certainly take pictures of the stuff that's sitting around in my basement for those boxes.
Commissioner Sackerson, Chair Commissioner, that can definitely happen as well.
Great suggestion. Thanks. Any questions about the kits? No? Okay. We'll move on to the South Cap survey update.
Chair Engel and Commissioners, a presentation on the South Capitol survey was provided by Emily Sackerson of South Fork Historical Research, the project's consultant, on August 12th at the Bismarck Memorial Veterans Memorial Public Library, 2 flyers, one with information on the project, providing some background on what a survey is, as well as what was kind of seen through that investigation that occurred in that neighborhood, as well as one flyer specifically on what a National Register listing does and doesn't do. Those were available at the meeting. Staff underestimated how many individuals would like to learn more about that. So we'll be posting these on the website as well for any individuals who are curious to learn more about it afterwards. They are also attached in the staff report at this time as well. Everyone was very excited. We did have a preliminary number of close to 100 people who attended the event, and Dakota Media Access was also able to record the presentation. So if anyone from the public's interested in looking at that again, it's available there. The State Historic Preservation Office has also accepted the final report for that survey. So there are no additional items to complete under this project.
It's amazing, and it was a very good presentation. I attended, and it was very interesting and very well attended. So, yes, Commissioner Nodlin.
I was out of town, but I'm really curious if there were any comments or questions from the audience that were interesting.
That's a great question, Commissioner Nodlin, Chair, Commissioners. So there were several comments, not too many specifically. I know a lot of individuals came up to Ms. Sackerson after the presentation just to, provide more information on, relatives or information they had heard about those living in the area, or to even ask questions, what that next step would look like. I know one of the questions that came up was what our public notification process was for this. So I think how we went about it was a good first step, especially if we would move forward with anything else in this neighborhood.
Yeah, it was great. The only other question that came up that had a bigger discussion were individual houses that had been moved outside of that area or moved in. There was one that actually got moved in, and several others that went, and one they found out went to Wishick. They got moved out of that district. So it was really good discussion, and I think she got a lot of good tidbits afterwards for the public comment period for people. So it was good.
Yeah, people seemed really interested and quite, if I were reading the room right, I think that there would have been quite a bit of support for behind another historic district, or at least the beginning of it. I mean, that people were so pleased to have more information about the neighborhood they'd been living in that there hasn't been a place to find that, unless you're a researcher and you're looking for it. And so this was giving a really nice context that people were really grateful for.
Yeah. No dissension, I guess, in any discussion about a potential district, or people kept that to themselves, but also just curiosity about the time periods of significance, that they were really curious about that. So it gave a lot of good information out there. So, yeah, awesome. I think we did well, and I can't wait for the next one to come through or expand the one we just did to capture everything. So, all right. Moving on then to the downtown district survey.
Chair Engel and Commissioners, the consultant for the downtown district survey, Graham Pape, submitted the first 10% of the site forms as noted in their contract for this project. Information regarding these initial forms, including issues and things to note about portions of the forms, was provided in the agenda, just some of those issues that they had working with those forms. A table with information from the site forms that were provided, those first 10%, was included in the agenda. I'm just pulling out some of those key information points for each of those sites. Staff recently received updated site data from the State Historic Preservation Office as well. This will be used similar to what was conducted with the South Capitol survey to identify previous sites, site leads, and other cultural resources within that 1 mile of the project area, and that will be provided to our consultant, all that information. The State Historic Preservation Office has signed off on sharing that information with our consultant for the project. So that information may also be useful for providing more information in those site forms that was submitted. Staff recommends reviewing and providing feedback on the submitted site forms to the consultant. That review may include information on how to work around some of those issues with putting information in those site forms or anything similar to that as well.
Sounds good. Do we have a deadline on when they need comments back?
The deadline hopefully would be soon. I know they have started working on the initial draft of the survey report for this commission as well as the state. If it would be possible to get any review from this commission by Friday at the latest. I did try to submit or send over a link to those site forms prior to this meeting. If there are any issues with accessing those site forms, please let me know.
Sounds good. Has anybody had a chance to review some of them?
I looked at them. They look really well written. Just some, I'll say, formatting or getting used to North Dakota style versus other state style of the, I believe it was page 5, where it's talking about access and setting, and then summary features and eligibility. I'd look at some of the old form or more recent architectural forms for advice on how to do that. But as I recall, I reviewed a sample of them, and it was like, immediately adjacent to an urban road. I'm like, that's not what SHPO's looking for when they ask for access. It's from nearest intersection. But I can try and put together an email and send it to you, Lauren, with some more specifics on that.
That would be great.
But yeah, it was just, I think, page 4 or 5.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. I know that it came up earlier when I was talking to Lauren. Does anybody have any information about the Dakota block as far as a name of the site? Lauren, do you want to?
I can, thank you, Chair Engel, Commissioners. So I can provide a little bit more information. As you can see in the packet, in that table, there's 2 different site forms with the Dakota block kind of called out on there. I can't remember which specific site form, but I know one of them, the consultant did mention that there was an issue with how it was previously recorded. I'm not sure if that's necessarily true or not, but I would look at those 2 specifically to see if there's any information you can provide the consultant for those.
And
Yes, Commissioner Sackerson.
do they do have access to the Sanborn maps, which should help them with a question, at least as far if they got any issue on the siting and whether it's actually states in the, a lot of times people don't look at the index thing that tells you what the name of the buildings are in some of those, so it may be that they need to look at that again. It may be different.
Commissioner Sackerson, Chair Commissioners, I believe the comment that they had made was that that portion of the building was referred to as a different building, and they have identified it as part of the original Dakota block building. I'm not sure if that's correct. So I ask for additional information.
Commissioner Omberg?
Chair Engel and Commissioners, I believe a portion of that building burnt down, and so a portion of it is new, and maybe it's divided that way. But
Okay. I'll do some research and get back. Okay. Sounds good. Any other discussion about that? Okay. Moving on to the Historic Preservation Plan. Sorry, I had to sing it. It's finally happening.
Chair Engel and Commissioners, the Historic Preservation Plan is meant to be a guiding document for activities conducted by the Historic Preservation Commission and a resource for the community on all things historic preservation. The draft of the Historic Preservation has been made available on the city's website for review and comments since mid-July. The public was provided with staff contact information as well as a form where they could provide that feedback. As of today, I have not received any feedback regarding the preservation plan, either via email or the form. If the Historic Preservation Commission provides corrections and changes with approval to the draft plan that's provided, the Historic Preservation Plan would be updated prior to presentation to the City Commission for that final approval. Staff recommends approval of the Historic Preservation Plan at this time.
I so move.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion, feedback, questions? All right. Yeah. Good job. We got it across the finish line, a year and a half late, but yeah, we got it. So thank you. It looks really good. I think it's going to be very useful, so thank you. Darcy, call over.
Commissioner Swanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Nodland,
Yes.
Commissioner Perrin,
Yes.
Commissioner Sackerson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
and Chair Engel.
Yes, yes, yes. Awesome, thank you. Aw. It was one for every year that we worked. All right, moving on to the 2026 Historic Preservation Fund Grant.
Chair Engel and Commissioners, the City of Bismarck was awarded a 2026 Certified Local Government Award under the Historic Preservation Fund grant of $37,800 to conduct the following projects. One is administration. This is mainly staff donated time under that one. The funding would actually work for the project for the historic context study of downtown, historic district plaques, and finally, historic building maintenance brochures. All the information regarding what was submitted with that application for those projects is attached in the agenda. For the historic context study for downtown, staff anticipates setting up a meeting with SHPO to discuss their thoughts on the RFP for that project. To stay on track, staff plans to include a draft of the RFP at the October 21st, 2026 Historic Preservation Commission meeting for this body's review. For the historic district plaques, SHPO has requested additional information on the installation of the plaques. Staff will work with them to identify the best option for those. A tentative timeline for that project is identified in that attachment. The next step for the project would be to begin designing the plaques and selecting buildings for the plaques as noted within that agenda item. For the historic building maintenance brochures, SHPO has also noted that those brochures should follow the Secretary of the Interior standards. With all that information, staff has recommended 3 actions following each of the 3 projects under the grant. The first would be to determine which commissioner or commissioners would like to help with drafting the RFP for the historic context study project. The second would be to determine which commissioner or commissioners would like to help with designing and selecting buildings for the historic district plaque project. And finally, the third item would be to determine which commissioners would like to help with drafting the historic building maintenance brochures.
Who wants to volunteer? Yes,
I'd volunteer for the building review.
the building review.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Which one was that? 1, 2, or 3?
Don't remember. Which was it?
He's big enough, he gets all 3.
It's drafting the RFP for the historic context study, helping with the design and selecting buildings for the historic district plaques.
Yes, for that one.
That one? Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
I'd volunteer to keep going on the first one.
Okay. Thank you.
I would volunteer to help draft with the brochures.
Amazing.
I'd be willing to help out wherever necessary.
All 3? Awesome.
Yeah, if someone needs help, I'm willing to help. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right, we'll just put you down, and then whoever is batter it. That sounds great. Thank you for volunteering. Yeah.
I see we have coloring books on here. Is that going
that's
to be
yours.
real? Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking, but there's no dollar amount associated with it, so.
Commissioner Swanson, Chair Commissioners, so that was originally applied for. I did include it in there just to show that we didn't receive any funding for that project, unfortunately. So if that would be a project to do in the future, that could be something to look at on staff's time to provide back to this commission.
We just couldn't use the historic preservation funds for those, but we can do them, certainly. I would think, yes.
Question. In the past, we've had many projects where we haven't used all of our funding. So can that just stay on our agenda so that if some other project turns up of these, doesn't use all the funding, then we can move forward with that? We can ask if we can move forward with that?
Sounds
So-
good. Yeah, Lauren's nodding, so I'm assuming that means it's legal. All right, sounds great. Any other suggestions or people that want to weigh in on any of those? No? Okay. Lots of good stuff happening. That's awesome. We like spending the money that we get. Let's see, for other business, does anybody have any other business to bring up? I do have one point. Any other business? No? Okay, so I'm gonna turn this over to Amy Sackerson, actually, and she's gonna fill everybody in on what's happening at the federal level, and then I'll tell you what's happening with us.
Good things, I'm sure.
Because I'm an advisor for the National Trust for Historic Preservation at the national level, they alerted us quite some time ago that there are proposed changes that are under review at the national level with the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation to essentially gut the Section 106 section of the Historic Preservation Act. It essentially affects so many people in this state because that is well, as you can see from what our first page here, all the Section 106 compliance projects that we're asked to participate in because that's the law, and it should be the law. And it's being, the wording is being removed to such an extent that there will no longer be consultation with concerned parties unless some body decides that they'd like to do that. So the absolute hard guidelines are being thrown out and the language is being changed. For an example, the definition of a historic site requires that it has experienced a man-made structure at some point in its existence. So gone are the view sheds that we've protected over the years. Gone are a number of different historic preservation frameworks by which historic preservationists, by which cultural resource managers and all that have proceeded quite efficiently for 60 years. Now the rules are all being rewritten. In response to that, groups such as the National Trust for Historic Preservation have sent out a war room status, essentially, for people in the cultural resource management world for whom this is their business. This is what they do. And to remind people that we still can comment. We don't have a very long period of time to comment because the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, which is the official federal government body that can make or break a project. For instance, they could have saved, they have saved the Badger 2 Medicine cultural area in Montana, culturally used by the Blackfeet and many other Indian tribes for years. It was threatened with oil and gas exploration. They say they came in and they said, nope, can't do that, you know. But this group of people, the advisory council, is composed of people like the Secretary of the Navy, the Secretary of the Interior, and all that level of people are the ones that sit on that board like this. And so their staff can't move through them to do the right thing because the people at the top are trying to rewrite the laws. So in support of the existing rules and the existing language that we have in the Historic Preservation Act regarding the protection of our cultural resources under the auspices of Section 106, we feel that the benefits that we need to show them, that our community, we need to show the advisory council that we use and have used Section 106 to successfully protect our unique resources. If we don't respond in that sort of a way, then they can throw North Dakota off the map. They don't have to worry about it. But if a body such as this, Bismarck is a CLG, you know, we're bound by Section 106 and by our own century code, which follows 106. So it seemed an appropriate time and appropriate for this Historic Preservation Commission to say, no, this is doing good for our community. This is protecting things that would not be protected otherwise. And so we have thought to draft a letter to that effect to send saying, yeah, Bismarck thinks it's working pretty well the way it is.
Yeah, and I'm going to step in because
So-
we did write that letter. We cited a lot of the things that are going on in the regulation proposed changes for the ACHP. We documented how this community and this body itself is actually using Section 106, and not just to protect and preserve, but just to document what's happening to these properties before they could get destroyed. We all know that progression happens. We know development has to happen, and we all have to move forward. But we need to at least document that history before it gets destroyed, or preserve it if it absolutely needs to be part of the community. Some of the points that we raised in that was the lack of consultation, the voices of the communities that are not going to be heard anymore through these processes, including our Native American partners and community members. And those are worrisome. We try and get the public involved. We want to raise awareness by the public. The public asked for us as a commission to say, hey, who are we? What's Bismarck's history? That's what we're trying to raise awareness of right now, and that's why we were commissioned. So the mayor signed the letter with us, and it went to the ACHP in support of limiting these rule changes or not using those rule changes that were proposed. I would say that they are limiting people's responses, and that they're not allowing form letters to go in as individual responses. They're only considering one of those form letters, the first one. If another one comes in that looks exactly the same, they're throwing all of those out. So it's limiting our voices and our ability to organize as an industry. And this is a nonpartisan issue. There are plenty of Republicans and Democrats, both sides, and independent political entities that like preservation, that want that history. And North Dakota has lots of tourism, and that's what people come to see, is some of those sites. So it's in our best interest to save what we can out of the regulations for Section 106. So I invite any of the commissioners to weigh in now on any of that. We're going to get you a copy of the letter that just went out. And anybody in the public that wants to respond or throw in their 2 cents, we'd love to hear it, because we're here for you.
You know, by way of context for these laws, for Section 106 and the idea of consultation and the whole development of the historic preservation laws in general, came about because the people in the United States didn't like what happened with urban renewal because there wasn't a voice for the people, and neighborhoods everything was ramrodded through in that progress thing. But also things weren't recorded, so things were lost that we can't even rebuild a narrative out of those things. Things that were really important were lost without the participation of the community. And so there was such an outcry that these rules were developed. And so we're seeing those removed. Well, and the thing that was the most important, not necessarily the buildings or the places or anything like the people's voice in what is happening within their community. And if we are left out of the conversation, it's not what people want. And it's hard to get it back once it's gone. That's why I always say it's really hard to interpret a building that isn't there. But it's really hard to protect things when the law behind it doing that, or even mitigate, to even allow us to mitigate, to use some of these funds to help us have a better idea of what is important, help us think about what's important in our communities and in our states. So I just think that we need to remember that this came about because we didn't have it once.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Just to add for anyone, listening, where it's like, one of the things they gutted was indirect effects. And I use the example of, Lincoln's, in Springfield, Illinois, I worked on a project that was near Lincoln's house. And it was like we had to be very careful on how tall that communication tower was, because if it's visible, it ruins the atmosphere of being on that street, which they preserved many buildings. But it's not just the buildings. If you can see a factory, stovepipe behind it, it's like, okay, that is, I no longer, breaks the feeling of the neighborhood. Or example would be like Gettysburg. If you put a bunch of wind farm and power lines and cell towers all around, it's like, sure, the battlefield is preserved, but you no longer have a sense of being on the battlefield. You're like, I am in a field where a battle happened, not, it breaks out the feeling of something, not just the practical preservation. If it's all about practical preservation, let's just build a warehouse and stick everything in there, and we can develop as much as we want.
One of the other changes that is proposed is making a historic boundary, say the South Capitol, determining whether the boundaries of a site are changing in the wording that they use, so that you could no longer have say a thematic nomination for Queen Anne houses, because if they're not next to each other or in the same neighborhood, they're not connected, they're not associated. So it's throwing out some of the connective tissue for how we actually are able to learn about some of these things. You can't. The framework is gone, and so that's very unsettling, because there are a lot of things that are not necessarily adjacent, but they're still connected. But if you can't prove that, if they aren't right next to each other, can't count that as part of it. So, does the railroad tracks make a break in a neighborhood here? Well, by the definition that they're looking at now, well, yeah. Means south of the tracks can't be related to north of the tracks because they're separated. It's like, I don't know. It's like some towns that have a river going through them. Missoula's for one. The one side of town isn't connected to the other side of the town by a barrier. Therefore, by the language that we're seeing, you couldn't have a district that spans the river. So it's a organizational nightmare for people trying to make district boundaries and things too. So,
It will definitely affect how we are doing cultural resource management and how us as an HPC will function. We'll have to look at the changes that are final resulting and see once if it changes how we proceed. Commissioner Nodlin?
I guess as someone who has a lifetime career in historic preservation and whose livelihood depends upon it, I'm very aware of the situation. As the vice chair of this commission, I don't feel comfortable speaking to the letter since I haven't seen it yet, and so I would appreciate seeing it before we are asked to comment on it.
Sure. We will put it in the packet for next time, and you guys can weigh in if you want. We moved fairly quickly because we're trying to get the mayor's signature and to get it in during the comment period. That's also been greatly reduced as to what normally would be happening in these processes. They're moving really fast to try and limit comments. So I understand that, and I apologize to the commission for not making sure that you guys had a copy of that letter. But the mayor signed it Monday. Is that right? Maybe something close to that. So, all right. Any other business? No? Okay. Hearing none, we will be considered adjourned, and the next meeting will be September 16th, right here in the Tom Baker meeting room. Thank you.